Can you believe that for as little as $9, you could buy yourself a wife? It sounds like a dark dystopian fantasy, a scene from a film where humanity has lost its way. But this shocking reality exists in several corners of our world. Imagine wandering through narrow alleys, the dust clinging to your clothes, the air heavy with the sound of bargaining and laughter. Suddenly, you stumble upon something strange. Not stalls selling fruit, clothes, or electronics, but a marriage market, a place where human lives are labeled with a price tag. The signs don't read bananas, $1 a bunch, but instead display names, ages, heights, weights, even education levels of young women. In some of these markets, for less than the cost of a meal in the West, you can marry a bride. Here, marriage is no longer the union of hearts. It is a negotiation where men bring cash or cattle to the table and women are exchanged like goods. Have you ever wondered, how much is love worth? How many cows can a smile buy? What is the price of a 17-year-old girl's innocence? Today, we will take you on a haunting journey across the globe, where marriage has been twisted into a business transaction, from bustling markets in Malaysia to secretive border villages between China and Vietnam, from temporary marriage contracts in Egypt to the wide savannas of South Africa, where bride price is measured in herds of cattle. We'll also uncover the stark realities in Sudan, India, Afghanistan, and even Bulgaria, places where poverty, tradition, and social pressure collide, turning one of humanity's most sacred bonds into a cold, calculated deal. This is not just a story about money and marriage. It is a story about human rights, about freedom of choice, and about countless lives forced onto paths they did not choose. And when the laughter of love is silenced by the sound of bargaining, we must ask ourselves, what is humanity really trading away? Number 8. Malaysia, the marriage market of thousands. Can you imagine a place where love is no longer measured by the beating of the heart, but by numbers coldly written on signboards for everyone to see? In Malaysia, there exists a marriage market where young women are priced between 18,000 and 2,000 ringgit, roughly 4,800 to 5,400 US dollars. Fair skin, silky black hair, a shy glance. All of it is translated into figures for negotiation. People say this is an investment in happiness. But when did happiness become a commodity, something to be weighed and purchased? And it isn't only local men who come here. Foreigners, too, are drawn in, as this bride market is advertised across international dating websites, where a man can choose a wife the way he might select an insurance plan. Pay more, get more. That is the promise whispered by brokers. Yet behind the glitter lies a society where emotions are commercialized. Women are still praised for their modesty, humility, and respect for their husbands. But that praise often serves as a polished mask to justify deep-rooted inequality. When love is reduced to a price tag, does it still hold a soul? A smile? A sacrifice? A life? Can it ever truly be measured in a few $1,000s? Malaysia, with its bustling streets and kaleidoscope of cultures, hides a bitter paradox. Marriage exalted as pride, yet dragged down into mere transaction. And within that paradox lies a mirror to a greater question. When humanity labels love with a cost, does love retain its meaning? Stay with me, because ahead, the stories of China will take us even further into a world that blurs the line between devotion and despair. Number 7. China, the border bride market. Have you ever heard of a country where tens of millions of men cannot find a wife, all because of a single policy that lasted for decades? China, the most populous nation on Earth, has suffered the long-lasting consequences of its infamous one-child policy, a measure designed to control population growth, but one that resulted in a massive gender imbalance. The outcome? An underground market emerged: bride trafficking, human trafficking. From poor villages in Vietnam, Laos, and Myanmar, young girls, some barely 16 or 18 years old, are lured with sweet promises: a steady job, a brighter future, and the chance to lift their families out of poverty. But once they cross the border, that dream collapses. Instead of opportunity, they are sold for around $2,600, forced into marriages against their will, or worse, pushed into brothels in major cities. Reports reveal that within just 4 years, 18 Vietnamese women were rescued, and the market's total value reached millions of dollars. Picture the scene: a rural wedding filled with music and confetti, neighbors cheering, but behind the bride's fragile smile are hidden tears. She cannot speak her husband's language. She doesn't know the laws of the country she now lives in, and she has no way to return home. Behind every bride sold across borders lies a poor family struggling to survive, a desperate mother clinging to hope, and a society too weak to protect its most vulnerable. This is not just about statistics. It is about dignity stripped away, about love reduced to a transaction, and about lives transformed into commodities. And the haunting question remains: when marriage becomes a desperate escape, who is truly happy in the end? Stay with me, for ahead lies Egypt, where a shocking form of temporary marriage costs as little as $9. Number 6. Egypt, the $9 temporary marriage. Can you believe that in the land of towering pyramids, in the cradle of the Nile that has witnessed centuries of civilization, marriage can be bought for just $9? In Egypt, there exists a shocking concept known as temporary marriage. For the price of a cup of coffee in Europe, a foreign man can marry a local woman for a few weeks, sometimes only a few months. And when he returns to his homeland, that marriage dissolves as if it never existed. People describe it as a strange mix of tradition and pragmatism. For poor families, it becomes a way to earn desperately needed income, a survival strategy when there are no other choices left. But in reality, it reduces marriage, one of humanity's most sacred bonds, into a contract of flesh, stripping away its sanctity and shrinking it down to a handful of bills. The irony is, many Egyptian women themselves seek out foreign men. In a patriarchal society where women are often undervalued, they hope that a foreign husband might treat them with more respect, more tenderness, more dignity than they receive at home. But how much respect can truly exist when love is priced lower than a simple meal in the West? An embrace, a glance, a whispered promise, all encapsulated in a receipt that reads less than $10. Egypt, the land of pharaohs and immortal monuments, now reveals a bitter paradox. Love turned into a transaction, marriage reduced to something that can be bought, sold, and canceled like a short-term contract. And this is only the surface. For if $9 can buy a marriage here, imagine how far love has been distorted in other corners of the world still waiting to be uncovered. Number 5. Southern Africa, the bride price of cattle. Imagine a wedding where the dowry is not a diamond ring or an envelope of cash, but an entire herd of cattle driven across a dusty plain. In South Africa, and across much of Southern Africa, marriage is still tied to an ancient tradition known as lobola, the bride price paid in cattle. For generations, a man seeking to marry had to pay with cows, and the value of a bride could be measured in dozens of them. A cow here is more than just livestock. It is a symbol of wealth, of honor, and of respect to the bride's family. Today, as modern life sweeps in, many of these exchanges are now settled in cash. Yet the standard remains tied to the price of cattle in the market. A single cow can cost anywhere between 14 and 420 US dollars, and thus the dowry can become an enormous sum. For the poor, lobola is a crushing weight, locking young men out of marriage altogether. For the wealthy, it is a stage for boasting, a display of prestige measured in cattle or in money. But the deeper question remains: does lobola still carry its original meaning, as a gesture of gratitude and respect to the bride's family? Or has it turned into a transaction that commodifies women? On one hand, the tradition ties communities together, preserves cultural identity, and honors the institution of marriage. On the other hand, it places invisible burdens, transforming love into negotiation, where women are priced in numbers and men carry the debt of cattle on their shoulders. South Africa, with its gleaming cities coexisting beside rural villages where traditions endure, stands as a mirror of this struggle between cultural traditions and modernity. And the story doesn't end here. As we turn to Sudan, where a bride can sometimes be bought for only a handful of dollars, the paradox deepens. Let us pause for a moment. After traveling through the stories of Malaysia, China, Egypt, and South Africa, we have wandered across some of the strangest marketplaces on Earth, places where marriage is no longer the longing of the heart, but a number written coldly on a ledger. Yet in this moment of stillness, a quiet question arises. When love becomes a transaction, what does humanity lose? Is it freedom? The freedom to choose the one we wish to spend our lives with? Is it dignity when a smile, a life, is tagged with a price like merchandise? Or is it happiness itself when consent is replaced with bargaining? True love is like light, illuminating and warming the human heart. But transactional marriage is like darkness, swallowing and distorting the soul. How much money can a smile be worth? How many cows can a tear buy? In putting a price on love, we not only impoverish the women who are bought and sold, but we impoverish humanity itself. Imagine, in the vast desert, a ritual fire still burns, and people lift their gaze toward a sky full of stars, while ancient ruins stand silently as witnesses of time. These images remind us that love was never meant to be calculated, never meant to be commodified. And in this deep breath of reflection, we are invited to look inward. What kind of legacy do we wish to leave behind? A civilization of bargaining or a civilization of love? Number 4. Bulgaria, the Roma bride market. Imagine a market that sells not spices, not clothes or fruit, but the very futures of young women. In Bulgaria, within the Roma community, a controversial custom still survives: the bride market. Every spring, when flowers bloom and festivals begin, hundreds of families gather in a special fairground. There, young girls dressed in glamorous clothes, faces carefully painted, walk as if on a runway, while their parents stand by to negotiate the bride price. The figures are not modest, from several thousand to tens of thousands of euros, depending on the bride's appearance, age, and family background. The bargaining happens openly, under the curious eyes of outsiders, as music from the festival fills the air. To many observers, this is nothing more than the commodification of women, an outdated relic that should be erased. Yet to many Roma families, the market is seen differently, as a way to preserve ancient traditions, while also addressing the economic burdens faced by communities that often live on the margins of society. The truth is complex: part celebration, part transaction, part honoring of beauty, part binding through money. Bulgaria thus becomes a vivid testimony to the coexistence of ancient traditions and persistent gender inequality. And the question echoes: where do we draw the line between cultural preservation and the perpetuation of injustice. When the festival lights fade, when the music disappears, and the young girls leave with a price placed upon their lives, we are left wondering, does love still have a place in this market of brides? The journey continues, and ahead, Sudan will reveal an even harsher paradox. Number 3. Sudan and South Sudan. A bride for just $9. Imagine a place where marriage does not begin with love, but with the value of a few cows. In Sudan and South Sudan, marriage is deeply tied to child marriage, where many girls as young as 14 or 15 are forced into wedlock, traded for cattle or a small sum of money. In the cities, a middle-class wedding can cost as much as $1,000, a figure far beyond the reach of most families struggling with poverty. But in poor rural areas, the reality is even more shocking. For as little as $9 worth of livestock, a man can buy himself a wife. Here, marriage is rarely about the heart. It is an economic strategy where daughters are seen as assets that yield returns. The more daughters a family has, the more opportunities they have to exchange them for cows, goats, or cash. Girls are treated as investments, as escape routes from poverty for their families, while they themselves are stripped of their freedom, childhood, and future. Picture this scene. A small village bathed in the smoke of evening fires, a young girl wrapped in an oversized bridal cloth, her wide eyes filled with confusion. Wedding drums beat loudly, but no one asks her heart, "Do you consent?" In this society, marriage becomes the balancing act between poverty and economic survival, between cultural tradition and gender injustice. And this bitter paradox raises a haunting question. Can a $9 wedding ever purchase happiness? Or is it simply a life sentence of bondage? As the sun sets over the grasslands of Sudan, we realize, here, love has been replaced by cold numbers, and youthful dreams are sold for the price of a cheap meal. Stay with me, for ahead lies India, a land of extravagant weddings yet riddled with contradictions, where the story of love and money becomes even more bewildering. Number 2. India. When happiness is bought with blood and money. Can you believe it? In a country where weddings are celebrated with dazzling extravagance, lasting for days with music, lights, and colors painting scenes straight out of a fairy tale, the grim truth is this. A bride can be bought for as little as $50 to $70. In India, the dowry system still persists despite being outlawed decades ago. A bride's family is often forced to pay enormous sums to the groom's family, in cash, gold, cars, even land. Yet in poor villages and struggling communities, the transaction reverses. A bride herself becomes the commodity, traded cheaply, her worth reduced to less than an old mobile phone. Imagine a wedding in Haryana, where the band plays loudly, fireworks light up the sky, and the groom rides a horse like a prince in a Bollywood film. But behind the bright red bridal veil and the trembling smile lies a secret. She was purchased from a distant rural village, brought here like an object to fill the void left by a severe gender imbalance. In northern states such as Haryana and Punjab, where sons have been favored over daughters for generations, millions of men cannot find wives. Thus, buying brides from poorer regions or even neighboring states has become an unspoken custom. Yet the tragedy does not end with purchase. Each year, thousands of women die because of dowry-related violence, when the husband's family deems the dowry insufficient or demands more. A match is struck in the kitchen, a wife set ablaze, the horror disguised under the name of a cooking accident. Can you fathom it? When happiness is built on blood and money, can it still be called marriage? If this were a cinematic scene, the camera would freeze on the bride's eyes, haunting, beautiful, sorrowful, as if asking us, can love truly be priced? And when society allows love to be bought and sold, it amputates the very soul of what makes us human. Number 1. Afghanistan, the harsh tradition of bride price. Imagine a wedding where the drums do not echo with joy, but with the tense bargaining between two families. In Afghanistan, marriage rarely begins with love. It begins with negotiation. The payment from the groom's family to the bride's family is called Walwar, the bride price, and it can rise to several $1,000s depending on the girl's background, education, and beauty. But behind these wealthy families willing to pay large sums lies a chilling truth. Many poor families are forced to marry off their daughters as young as 12 or 13, simply to repay debts or ease their economic burden. In some cases, the bride price has been recorded as low as $9, an amount so insignificant compared to the worth of a life, yet one that reveals the extreme poverty of society. In this deeply conservative land, where women have little voice, marriage is not always a choice. It is often more like a sentence, where the destiny of young girls is sealed before they even understand the meaning of childhood. Picture the scene. A child draped in an oversized wedding dress, her trembling hands clutching a bouquet, her blank eyes staring toward the far horizon. The wedding drums echo through the village, yet her heart has never been asked, "Do you consent?" This is the painful paradox of Afghanistan, a country of towering mountains and glorious history, yet one where love is imprisoned by cold numbers. When marriage becomes a price to settle debts, to uphold honor, to continue tradition, can it still be called marriage? Or is it merely a contract that chains a life forever? And as the winds sweep across the Hindu Kush mountains, one cannot help but wonder, does love still have a place in this land? We have just traveled through a journey of paradoxes. From the marriage markets of Malaysia to the cold borderlands where brides are trafficked between China, from temporary $9 unions in Egypt to cattle traded for wives in South Africa, from the Roma bride fairs in Bulgaria to rural Sudan, where marriages are sealed for the price of a meal, from dowries soaked in blood in India to the preordained fates of young girls in Afghanistan. Each story is different, yet they all converge upon the same haunting question. When love becomes a commodity, what does humanity lose? Love was meant to be light, a fire that warms, that binds, that makes us whole. But when it is reduced to numbers, when women are priced in money, in cattle, in contracts, society does not just wound those who are trapped within these systems. It diminishes itself, stripping away the most sacred gift we possess, the right to love and to freely choose. So tell me, what do you think is the most terrifying? The bustling marriage markets, the cheap temporary contracts, or the dowries that leave behind blood and tears? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this video opens your eyes to new truths, hit like, share it with others, and don't forget to subscribe to Fascinating Discoveries, because the world still holds countless hidden realities behind cultural veils, and this journey of discovery has only just begun.